Hello everyone and welcome to my new video, finally. Today I'm going to talk about my Templar healer for the Ravenwatch campaign, so for Non-Proc Cyrodiil. I'm going to talk a bit about this build. I struggle to call it my build because I'm not the only one who runs this type of setup. We're on Ravenwatch. We don't have a lot of choice in terms of what sets we can wear because a lot of sets are not enabled there. But I just wanted to show you what I run there, why I run it, what type of gameplay it is suited for, and things that you might consider if you want to adjust the build a little for your type of gameplay. So if you need more defenses or you need more resources or stuff like that. So yeah, just to get into the question of what this type of build is good for, my aim is to heal groups of 7 or more. So that could be a ball group, that could be another type of AoE group. It could also be a Zerg or a casual guild or something along those lines. I wouldn't use this per se in a small scale, so in groups of 3, 4, 5 or something like that. You will need a bit more defense in that situation. I will tell you how to do that, like how you could be a little beefier on this build. But my primary concern with the build is to generate the maximum amount of healing possible while also matching the survivability of my group. So it's about maximum healing output, good uptimes on skills because we also have quite decent sustain on this build, and yeah, that's the type of gameplay that it's good for. Now let's take a closer look at the sets that I run. We'll start with the monster set. I only run a one piece because it's Ravenwatch, it's non-proc. A whole lot of monster sets don't work here. The ones that do, kind of useless for healers in my opinion, so I just run the one piece for the extra healing done. It could also be Earthgore or Troll King. I just happen to have Symphony of Blades, but it's about that one piece bonus. Then the first actual set that I run is Heartland Conqueror. Now, Heartland Conqueror, what it does, it takes a trait of your weapon. For example, on my back bar, I have a Restoration Staff with a power trait. What Heartland Conqueror does, that it takes that trait off your weapon and it doubles the bonus. So in this case, I go from 9% extra healing done to 18% extra healing done. It's kind of a mid set on the CP-enabled servers, but in Ravenwatch, we don't have a whole lot of ways to directly boost our healing, and this is a great way of doing it, which is why it's often run on healers, and I also have run it on my healer pretty much ever since I started healing on this campaign. Now, the second set, also quite important because it is the best sustain set available to us on Ravenwatch. It's mainly about that 5th bonus it gives. It gives us 245 extra Magicka, Stamina, and Health Recovery. Okay, Health Recovery, not very relevant. Magicka and Stamina Recovery, however, those are relevant to us as healers because we will run both Magicka skills and Stamina skills. So having these bonuses there is just great because it takes a whole lot of pressure off of our sustain. Again, on the CP-enabled server you would run something else, but this is just the best set of its kind that's available to us on Ravenwatch. Now, as a mythic, you can do a couple of things here. I happen to run Mark and Ring of Majesty at the moment because it gives me a bit of both. It gives me extra defense, gives me extra spell damage, which gives me more healing basically. So it's like a way of me to directly increase my healing. The other choice here would be Wild Hunt, which I sometimes use as well. Wild Hunt gives you more speed, so if you make a mistake with your positioning, you have a better chance of correcting that mistake because you can just zoom back into your group and nothing will happen. So marking is a bit more on the edge, but the setup that I'm showing you now is just like the one with like the beefiest healing. Now there are a couple of things that might surprise you a little bit for a healing build. First of all, I run 5 pieces of medium armor, so only this Amber Plasm Sash here is light. Heartland Conqueror is a heavy chest. The rest is all medium, it's 5 medium. Now there's a couple of reasons why I do this. First of all, it gives me access to a skill that I will talk about later. Second of all, it gives me good stamina sustain and good raw spell and weapon damage, which is always good because that gives me like bigger healing, and stamina sustain is quite relevant on a healing build as well. Gives me a bit of extra speed even. And we'll sort out the Magicka sustain through another way that we'll talk about soon. But this just gives me a lot more healing than if I would run like 4 or 5 light pieces. I have tried it. I didn't like it. This is what worked for me. Then we have the traits. So I like to run 5 impenetrable just to get through that crit damage a bit better. Chest is heavy reinforced. Mask in my case is divines. Could also be something else. The traits really are kind of like up to your playing style. Like I know that a lot of people use sturdy on their healers, but I don't like to stand somewhere and tank through damage. I just want to get the hell out. I just want to survive the initial hit and then just get out of there. So sturdy is not really something that I use because I don't end up blocking a whole lot of damage. Like when I look at logs and stuff, like there's not a whole lot of mitigation that I'm doing through my blocking, so sturdy is not for me. The traits then on the jewelry in my case are all infused. Again, this is kind of because this is my beefiest setup. If you are struggling with speed and you find yourself in the wrong position too many times, you could also run like 2 swift or again wild hunt. So it's kind of up to you what you're comfortable with. I'm quite comfortable with this. This works for me. 3 infused and mark-in. Also because like in the ball group that I play, we usually have like a speed bot or however you want to call it, someone who provides that speed for us. So I don't really need it. But if you're like on your own in terms of speed, you might want to try out 2 swift or something like that. Now, to maybe the most important part, because you know that the back bar, you can see that the back bar here is a powered restoration staff, which is not at all surprising because that's what healers use, right? Now the front bar is dual wield. And why is it dual wield? Well, because the passives in the dual wield skill tree give us a lot of spell damage, a lot of weapon damage. So what this means is that if you look at my skills, which we'll get to in a moment, I have my burst heal on my front bar. So if you take a look at my spell damage in the lower right section, you can see that if I switch to my resto staff, there's like a 1200, more or less 1200 spell damage difference. So what this means is if I heal on my main bar, or if my dots tick on my main bar, I just do a whole lot of more healing. And there's really no disadvantage to this, because in the end you might have a little more trouble sustaining yourself because you might want to use like light attacks or heavy attacks to sustain yourself. You can still do that through your back bar. You can still do that with your resto staff. On your front bar, like, you won't be using these a whole lot to like light attack or heavy attack because you don't want to be near people. You want to be like outside of where the trouble is. So in the end, we go with double swords on the front bar. Swords increase our spell and weapon damage, as said. I also made this one, the first sword, Nurnhound. Offhand one is powered, extra spell damage, extra healing. And that's basically the best setup to give us like really strong heals. Okay, so now we know what we're running, what I'm running. So now it is time to take a look at skills. Here we have Inner Light, which gives us a little bit more crit chance. It's now around 27%, so more or less 1 in every 4 ticks of healing will crit, which is not amazing, but on Non-Proc it's quite decent. And then we have Channeled Focus, which is the Templar skill that gives us a bunch of things, really. It gives us Major Resolve, which increases our resistances, so it's above 20k each for physical and spell resistance. It also gives us back a little bit of Magicka, which is also decent. If you stand in the circle, you get a bit of extra healing for yourself. And also through one of the Templar passes, if you stand in this circle, you will get minor mending, and minor mending increases your healing by 10%. It's a passive bonus that you can get. Now the uptime on that now is not amazing. It's around 50% from what I've seen. But the next patch, apparently this circle will start moving with you, which in theory should mean that you can get minor mending as long as you keep this skill up. So that's actually quite good, because no other class really has that. So yeah, this is, but even in its current state, this is a skill that you always want to keep up, because it just makes you, it makes your sustain better, it makes your resistance is better, it makes your healing better. So just treat this skill well. Now this is kind of your flex spot. For now I've put Flare here. The morph doesn't really matter that much, because it's here for two reasons. The first reason is major protection, 10% less damage taken from other players. The other reason is that the support skill tree has a passive in it that means that if we slot a support skill, such as Flare, then we get extra sustain. So that's also a reason why it's here. It gives us extra Magicka recovery, actually. If you need to remove a skill, I will show you in a bit. This is the one you want to consider, because this is not essential. This is just kind of like a luxury skill to have when you have the space. Now, Ritual of Rebirth is very important because it's our primary burst heal on a Templar. And I've chosen this over Breath of Life or Honor the Dead because it hits more people in the radius. So if you're small scaling, Honor the Dead will be the better choice, but if you're like in a bigger group, Ritual of Rebirth will heal for a lot, because it heals everyone in your radius plus one person, outside of your radius. So it's a very reliable burst heal. It is a bit expensive, a bit more expensive than Blessing of Restoration, but it's also a bit better in my opinion. And the advantage that we have on the Templar is that we have this class burst heal, which means that we can run our burst heal on our dual wield bar. So on the bar on which we have the most spell and weapon damage. On other classes, you would maybe use Blessing of Restoration, which means you would have to use it on your Restoration bar, which means it will hit for a bit less. So this is what makes this build particularly good on a Templar as opposed to, for example, a Sorc. Now, Echoing Vigor, very important. It's the best heal over time skill in the game. Every healer should run it, no matter the spec, in my opinion. Keep this up at all times. Realize that it applies to 6 people. So if you cast it once, then it will hit 6 people max. Which means that if you play in a group of more than 6 people, you will want to like double cast it every rotation. So just press it twice basically, and it will cover 12 people, and that should be enough in most cases. Practice Incantation is our ulti. I put it on the front bar in this build, again because it's the bar with the most spell and weapon damage. It can't always be here, I'll explain in a bit, but this is basically the ulti that you want to use with big pushes. So when your group's taking a lot of damage, you can use this skill because it heals for a lot. It makes you pretty hard to kill as well. It also makes you quite slow, so be aware that you might want to position yourself a bit outside of the melee. Okay, moving on to the back bar. The first skill that we have is Elude. Elude is the medium armor skill from the medium armor tree, and we can only use it if we have 5 or more pieces of medium armor equipped, which we do. So we can use this skill because it gives us a 20% damage reduction on area damage, such as siege ticks, enemy ball group pushes will have a lot of AoE damage in them. So it's a really good skill to have, especially because that's the type of damage that you are often confronted with in Cyrodiil. It also gives us major expedition when we are damaged, so it's also nice to have for your mobility. You can also use another skill here, such as Quick Cloak or something along those lines. But this one has the highest duration of major evasion, which is why I chose it. Healing Springs is our ground hot. Basically, you just put it everywhere your team is running or standing. Standing makes it a bit easier. But what it does, it gives a pretty nice heal on the ground to our teammates, while it also boosts our magic recovery. So you get 15 recovery for each target affected, stacking up to 20 times, as it says in the tooltip. Basically what this means is that if you put it in a big group, you'll reach the maximum recovery, which is around 300 if I'm not mistaken. You will reach that in like 1 or 2 seconds, so it's a really good skill to have to keep up at all times preferably, but especially when you're standing still, like when you're sieging or something like that. Radiating Regeneration, that's our other hot. Like we have Echoing Vigor and we have this one, and what we do is we basically try to keep them up as much as possible, both Echoing Vigor and this one, because this provides like a little layer of defense in case our team gets attacked, because they will have like 2 hots stacking on them, and on top of that they will get burst heals when they get pushed. So it's really important to keep this one up. Echoing Vigor hits 6 people, this one hits 3, so you might want to spam it a bit more. It's not an expensive skill, so you can afford to like spam it like 3 times per rotation or something along those lines. Just press this button whenever you're bored and you don't know what other skill to press, because like this is always good to just reactivate as much as possible. Radiant Aura is a good skill because it gives more recovery to our entire team and to ourselves. So we gain 15% more recovery on magicka, health, and stamina. It also is a skill that lasts for 1 full minute, so keeping this one up at all times, it's not a difficult thing to do. And Extended Ritual is also a bit of a flex, but I use it to put down during sieges so people can cleanse themselves from negative effects, and also to heal them a bit extra when they are sieging. And sometimes I use it to cleanse negative effects of myself when there's no purger nearby. It's a bit expensive, so don't spam it too much, but it's a good skill to have. The ulti that I have here is Barrier. Barrier is here mainly because it is a good defensive ulti to have, and also because it's from the support skill line, so it gives us a bit of extra magicka recovery for merely having it on our bar. You may have noticed that on my bars I have nothing that procs minor sorcery or major sorcery or brutality on my bars, and that's because this build has the assumption in it that there's a Dragon Knight near who can give me those buffs. So if you don't have a Dragon Knight nearby, what you can do is that you slot Living Dark instead of Flare. Again, Living Dark provides a nice bit of like selfish protection for you, and it also procs your minor sorcery, so you can use this to proc your minor sorcery. One thing I would do is I would swap the ultis around, so I would use Barrier on the front bar and practice Incantation on the back bar, simply because it's more essential that we have the magicka recovery bonus from the support skill line on our burst heal bar, because this is the one we will be using the most, and this is the one that's the most resource intensive. So if you remove Flare here, you move the Barrier to the front bar to still give yourself that nice sustain boost. And then of course major sorcery, there's a couple of things you can do. You can simply run spell power potions, which I always find a little bit difficult to do in some situations, because you also want to get back that stamina when you're being pressured hard, but you can do that. Another thing you can do is that you go to the major skill line, you slot Degeneration, and you put it here, for example, and that way you can proc your own major brutality and major sorcery. I don't like this skill very much because you need a target to proc it, and when you're being sieged from above, there's not always a target available, maybe a guard or so, but like the uptime is pretty hairy with this skill, so I don't like using it myself. But just know that if there's no decay far and wide to be seen, this is what you can do to still give you that nice boost to your healing power. Now, on the topic of potions, which one do you normally use? Which ones do I normally use? Well, I'll show you. Normally I simply just use these ones, the tri-stat restoration potions, the ones from the crown store will do, crafted ones will do, doesn't really matter. Or I use this one, Essence of Immovability. I use these before like big pushes, when I don't want to be stunned right in the middle of them. They don't give stamina, so be aware, like if you pop this, that you don't have like an empty stamina pool, because even if you don't get stunned for a few seconds, you will kind of suffer when the knockback effect or the immovability effect runs out, and you will get snared and you can't break free because you don't have stamina because you used the wrong potion. So it's a bit context sensitive, but these are the ones that I typically use. So either tri-stat when I need stamina, or immovability before a big push. The race that I use, I am a dark elf simply because I like dark elves, but it doesn't really matter that much in terms of making the build work. If you're looking to optimize, there's a couple of things you can consider. You can consider a Breton or an Imperial to get that cost reduction, to get better sustain. You could go for a Nord to get a bit more ulti regen. It kind of depends on what you're looking for, but like I said, it doesn't make or break the build. The food that I use is Ozorga's Wrath Hrothgar. It's the food that you get from the quest line in Hrothgar. It gives us almost 5k max health. It gives us a lot of magicka recovery as well. So in combination with the passives from the medium armor skill line, we have quite a lot of magicka sustain and stamina sustain at the same time, without having Jewels of Misrule or Zorga's Smoked Bear Haunch, which is very expensive. But we don't have to use that because this gives us good stats. So attributes, I went with 29 magicka, 35 health, which gives us a magicka pool of around 24k, which is actually for group heal specs quite high. I've seen people heal with like as low as 20k health or even below that, but I like to have this magicka pool here so I can spam my heal a few times if we get pushed really hard, so I have kind of like a full tank to do that. Max health 30k. If you count the Warden buff minor toughness, this goes up to almost 33k, which I think is really enough in Raven Watch. Like the damage is a bit lower in Raven Watch, and if you position yourself well, like you will not get like absolutely demolished on this amount of health. Maximum stamina is just normal. What I have as a Dunmer is it's 18k. Now onto probably the most controversial part of this video, is that I'm not a vampire, and this is like an ongoing debate between people in the healing community, like, do you slot vampire, do you not slot it? Basically, I don't think it's necessary, because as a healer, we are trying to not be in the thick of things. Because vampirism, like the advantage of vampirism is that at stage 3, it gives you a lot of mitigation, so an anti-execute basically, but the trade-off is that your skills will cost more to use, so you get like a sustained penalty, which on a healer is never a good thing. Well, not on any build, but healers especially, because they need to keep their rotations up as much as possible. And you might think, okay, so if you're not a vampire, then won't you get like destroyed because all your other friends are, your other teammates are, the DDs are, but you aren't? Not really, because as a healer, what you want to do, you want to stay out of trouble. So you want to be within reach of your group members, but when they push inside another group, then you kind of like take a different line around them to meet up like where they finish the push. So you don't go into the push, you don't like go head first into an enemy ball group, because especially on a Templar, all your skills go in a radius, so you don't really have to aim them well. For example, with Ritual of Rebirth, you can just press it, your team will be healed as long as you are within a reasonable distance. So this makes it quite easy for you to avoid a lot of damage. Like if I look at logs in any group I play in, I am consistently in the top, or in the bottom 2, I should say, of damage taken. So I take the least amount of damage. I also have to mitigate the least amount of damage, which means that I can play without vampirism, which in turn means that I can do more healing. Like I can use my skills more, I can have better up times without compromising my healing power. So that's why I don't use Vampirism. Now, as said, this is a build for groups that are a bit bigger, because if you get targeted, you can just run back into your group and kind of like blend into the DDs and you'll be fine. Your survivability will come from cross heals within your group, not from your own tankiness, so you'll be fine. If you run in a small scale, however, Vampirism becomes a much more attractive option because you will be targeted more and there's less chance for you to really escape the pressure by just blending into your group. In the end, it's a personal choice. Can you play this build with Vampirism? Absolutely you can. You might want to have some cost reduction or extra recovery glyphs or something like that, but you can't play it like that, so it's not impossible. I just prefer not to play with Vampirism because in my experience, I don't really need it. Like I said at the beginning, it's my objective to match the survivability of the rest of my group. It's not my objective to tank 10 people when all my group mates are dead on the ground. So with this setup, I can do that. So yeah, we're currently in update 37. Necrome will release in about a month from now. Will there be any changes for update 38? I do not think so, because Raven Watch builds are kind of more static than CP ones, because we don't have a whole lot of options anyway. One thing that will change is that Order's Wrath will presumably work as intended in Raven Watch next patch. Order's Wrath being more of a crit healing set, or you can use it like a crit healing set. I might try it on Nightblade, but I think for Templar and for a lot of other classes this will remain the best setup, and especially for Templar because we can use our burst heal on the bar that has the most spell damage, so we get a lot of nice heals. So yeah, give this build a try. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.